in our Miranda Anthistle now. Miranda, what a day it's been. So many things happening here and so many different issues to dive into, including the fact that Kamala Harris is the first Black South Asian female vice president. We saw some major performances as well at that inauguration ceremony, but you know, lots of firsts for sure today.
That's right, Tracy. And in fact, it's been an historic month of January in Washington, from the Capitol Hill insurrection to last week's impeachment vote, and of course today being Inauguration Day. So lots to talk about. For more insight on all of this, we're going to bring in Professor of Law Josh Kastenberg, who joins us now from D.C. Good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here. All right, so this has really been an inauguration day like no other, but there have been comparisons to Abraham Lincoln's inaugurations back in 1860 and 1864. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so those are fair comparisons to make. And the reason I say that is President Lincoln had threats against his life, and President Lincoln also faced a major insurrection brewing in 1860. In 1864, the country was divided in a civil war, and that meant that he had further threats upon his life. The country was being torn apart. Now, during that insurrection, during 1860 and 1864, the country was at a very dangerous precipice. That dangerous precipice existed, as we saw on the 6th of January. President Biden has given a message of unity, and I think it was not just a message of unity and symbolism, like, for example, our poet laureate and singer Garth Brooks, what an image that made, but a message of unity that this administration will be governed by facts and the truth. He spoke for the first time of racial inequality, not for his first time, but for the first time of any president, of racial inequality and solving that problem on a platform, and also addressed climate change as well as economic inequality. I think he had a difficult task ahead of him, as difficult as Abraham Lincoln did, and that is to try to begin to heal the nation, but also something Lincoln didn't have to do, which was to assure our allies in Europe and Canada, Japan, South Korea, that we do value democracy and we do need to work together to ensure that totalitarianism and tyranny are kept at bay. And that really was the resounding message of his inauguration.
And Professor Kastenberg, talking about unity and working together, usually the outgoing president will attend his successor's inauguration. Now, Trump broke this tradition, and that makes him the first sitting president in more than 100 years to miss the ceremony. Yeah. So what exactly does this say?
Well, it actually says a lot. You know, look, President Andrew Johnson wouldn't attend President Ulysses Grant's inauguration in 1868, well, 1869, actually. And President Johnson is now regarded as one of the worst presidents in American history. He was a racist. He was an alcoholic. He was willing to have slavery come to an end. He grew up as a very poor man in Tennessee, but he despised wealthy slave owners, but he also despised African Americans, and he worked against giving them any semblance of equality in the country. You know, Ulysses S. Grant is a complicated figure. He's not the simpleton that he was sometimes made to be. By the time Grant becomes president, he makes it very clear that he wants to crush the Ku Klux Klan, which has emerged, and also that he wants to make sure Reconstruction works, that newly freed slaves are treated as equal United States citizens. There was tremendous anger that Johnson had towards Grant over Johnson's impeachment. So Johnson left town, and he's ranked in the bottom 5 of presidents, along with James Buchanan, Franklin Pierce, Warren G. Harding, and I would say in all likelihood now, President Trump.
All right, and Professor, what you're probably hearing in the background there, those are cannons going off during the ceremony at Arlington Cemetery in Washington. But of course, even though there's pomp and circumstance surrounding today's inauguration, a lot of it has changed because the crowds just aren't there. So how much do you think that's taken away from Biden being inaugurated and becoming president?
I don't think it's taken away anything, because the majesty of a peaceful transfer of power in a democracy, whether it happens in Canada, or in the United States or elsewhere is not reliant upon the crowd size, but reliant upon the good-hearted statements of an outgoing leader and an incoming leader. In this case, we have an incoming leader. When you look at the stage and you see former Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, former Vice President Pence, presidential aspirant Hillary Clinton, commentary that about President Carter's good wishes being there. He's in a condition where he wasn't able to travel. I think that that's part of the majesty of what an inauguration is, rather than the crowd size. And I think Biden's words today overcame any idea about not having the largest inauguration attendance in history. So it was about substance and not size.
All right, and Professor, transition of power has happened, but there are still quite a few loose ends from Trump's presidency. So tell us a bit more about those.
Yeah, so we know that there were over 100 pardons and last-minute commutations of sentence. And what I think the world should know about this transfer of power is it was peaceful at the end of the day, but far right-wing extremist and white supremacist groups haven't diminished in number. And one of the reasons they didn't show today is there was an armed military presence. And that goes against the desires of the framers of our Constitution, who, believe it or not, didn't even want the United States to have a standing army. When you consider America's military might today, it's quite impressive. Of course, there are other things that are important on the world stage, diplomacy being one of them, leading by example being another. But it was peaceful, but there's still a question of it was peaceful because of the presence of so many members of the United States military serving as a deterrent. The important thing there's many important things on that, but one of them is, unlike the fall of the Weimar Republic, in 1933 to 1935, I think President Trump and the right-wing, white supremacist right-wing groups thought they might have the military with them. And the institution of the United States military is designed to be apolitical. And it will swear allegiance to the Constitution. I did that for 24 years, and it really doesn't matter who the president is. Once that's understood, I think that the military's presence served as an unfortunate deterrent power. Now, having said that, the other loose ends are, this isn't over. We're going to see months and months of grand juries, of congressional investigations, not only into what happened and who was responsible for the 6th of January, but quite a lot of fighting and cover-up over other misconduct that is either alleged or has actually occurred over the last 4 years in the Trump White House. And President Trump himself is likely to be facing grand jury investigations in New York, in Georgia, and in the District of Columbia, as well as in the United States District Courts.
All right, so we really haven't seen the last of Trump. There's still lots more to talk about, but thank you right now for your time, Professor Kastenberg. That's Joshua Kastenberg, law professor, joining us from D.C.
Well, thank you.